Hey, happy Monday, everyone. I hope I'm heard okay. I just realized while going live that I don't have my headphones, which I usually do with the microphone. But Roelof, do you hear me well?
Yes, I do.
Good. Then we're all with this. So happy Monday, everyone. Wherever you're tuning in, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, the other platforms where we're usually trying to chime in. Today we're going to talk about leadership, the opposition of managing tasks and leading people, and how to be successful in leading people. And we are talking based on the 7 lessons that a colleague of mine in the UK, Gordon Treadgold, has shared. He's working as a leadership coach and speaker with many big companies, and he shared his 7 lessons that he wished he would know when he was early leader or beginner leader, so to say, that would help him to lead others more successfully. And I will drop a link to that original post in the comments here, so hopefully you can see that on whichever platform you're chiming in, so that you can refer to those 7, and we'll just walk you through that list of 7 and discuss what our thoughts and take on each of them is. So, Roelof, shall we take the first one?
Why not? You don't necessarily have to do them in order. I mean, if you want, but up to you.
Up to you. We can do them in the alphabetical order. Let's do them by numeric order. So the first one is, it's all about the people. Duh. One would say when it's about leadership. So without having Gordon with us, Roelof, what do you think? Why does that come as the first lesson for him?
I think I can't take it out of the duh thing. It's because leadership is about leading people. So the first thing you need to know is as much as you can what drives them, what inspires them, what makes them tick, and those are the aspects you need to understand. You need to understand your target market is really what this is saying, and you don't understand your target market, then you're going to make mistakes. So it is all about the people. And how, of course, you're going to move them. But that's going to be one of the other points coming up. So I don't think there's much we can say about that. It's all about the people. It's true.
I think I have a thought about why that would come. First of all, we have discussed it several times, I think, already, the career progression in many companies, when the best engineer, the smartest sales guy becomes the manager of his team, right? The team that he has been a member or she has been a member of. And that, without proper leadership training that we usually missing in many organizations, can lead that by habit or by momentum, by inertia, and just having things as they used to be, you become a leader, but you're still thinking in those tasks that you were doing as the engineer, the salesperson, the copywriter, and so on and so forth. So it could be that as one of the reasons that we don't really get the elevation of our mindset and elevation of our goals as a leader clearly communicated to us from our leadership team and clearly ingrained in ourselves as the leader, that we every day thinking through the lens of how can I lift my people, how can I help my people evolve and develop. It's more about, okay, we have those tasks as a team, and I used to do those tasks myself. Now I just need to kind of do them, but at the same time help others do their tasks. So it can be this lack of some step, communication and clarity kind of step in the transition from being a doer on the team or part of the team to become the leader of the team.
Yeah, so that makes sense. What of course you've been training for your entire life, probably up to that point, is trying to become a better or more effective version of yourself. And if you don't have the training, or you're not aware that being a leader isn't about being primarily about to be the better version of yourself, but about helping people to be better versions of themselves, you might find yourself sticking to thinking, oh, I'm a leader, so I have to be an even better version of myself as I already was. So I know I have to, I maybe have to work harder, or I have to work smarter, or what have you. And that's where it breaks down, because then the focus is, of course, when you say I have to be a better version of myself, the focus is by definition on myself and not on others.
Yeah. I see a comment here from Daniel. I'll put it on the screen. Evolving from project management to product leadership, for example. Yeah, exactly what we're talking about. When we need to make some shifts in our mindset, in our intentions and goals, to get from thinking about tasks and focusing on the tasks to thinking about and focusing on the people who are helping us implement those tasks.
Yeah. So I mean, your goal now is not your own success. Well, at a certain level it is, but your primary goal is trying to ensure the success of others.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second thing I want to quickly mention here is that quite often we as leaders might want to focus on our people, but the company culture doesn't allow us, because we have so many meetings. I hear it from way too many organizations that I'm so fed up with meetings. We just sit around the table and discuss things instead of doing things. And I, as a leader, want to spend more quality time supporting my team, but I don't have the time because I have meetings back to back to back. So that could also be another reason for why Gordon has put this on the list of the lessons, that it's easy sometimes to start to not see the trees behind the forest in a way because of the culture.
So I think you also have to differentiate with who you're having your meetings. I mean, if you're having meetings back to back with your team, that's fine. It's just if you're having meetings back to back with people who are not on your team, and so your team is not getting the attention it deserves, then you have a problem.
Yeah. And quite often when those complaints come to me, it is about some information meetings, some reporting meetings where the leader is reporting upwards or to the other parts of the organization, or some meetings to discuss or to get the information that could have been just sent out as an email. So it is about having the intentionality of each meeting and thinking, is this helping me to lead my people?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've always noticed is that you do have some leeway in that. In other words, you can give, in most companies, you can give pushback. You say, look, I'm not going to attend this meeting because I need to free up time for my team. And that is often accepted. And it's just that many people just don't do that. They're called into a meeting and they go. Because they think if they don't go, they're going to miss out on information. They're going to miss out, on influence, which actually both may be true. But here's the point is where do your priorities lie? And your priorities as a leader should lie with your team.
And I actually just 2 weeks ago had this conversation with one of my clients. She's not in leadership positions and officially in her team. And we discussed with her that she was having this problem, that they have quite a lot of meetings. And we discussed with her how she can try to free herself up from that, so that she has focused time on solving the problems that they're supposed to solve within her team. Yeah. And she said that I actually just voiced that during our conversation, kind of startup conversation before the autumn term, so to say. She said, like, I feel stressed from us having so many meetings where we don't get the outcomes. And a lot of people chimed in and said, I feel the same. And the outcome of the discussion was that they decided on Friday mornings, I think it was, first X hours of the day are meeting free for the whole part of the organization, so that everyone can focus on their tasks. So just being this voice is actually a big thing, and you can change it not only for yourself, but for everyone around you as well.
Yeah. So a lot of companies do that. I think it's kind of easy just to say, look, can we limit our meetings until the Wednesday afternoons or whatever fits, so the time is available to do that. So we're not meeting all the time. And I used to actually work with, I mean, we centered all our meetings on the Monday and the Thursday, with the idea that you would never have to go more than 2 working days if you needed to get a group together to work that. But because you knew, that it would be on the Monday and the Thursday, so if you had a problem on Tuesday, you didn't feel the need to call a meeting unless, of course, it was terribly urgent, but that's not that many things. But okay, well, I can wait till Thursday to handle this. And same thing on the Friday, you can say, well, we can wait till Monday to handle this. There's no reason to have to call in a meeting. Yeah.
So I want to urge you guys to really, and guys and girls, I mean girls, to reflect on how is your culture supporting you and your leaders with the organization to put the people first and actually focus that and remind yourself that it's all about the people and not the tasks. All right, we spent way too much time. Sorry for that. You wanted to just move on, and I just spent 10 minutes on this first one, but I thought it was a very important one. So number 2, not communicating enough is the same as not leading. I'll repeat, not communicating enough is the same as not leading. Your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a pretty heavy statement, but yeah, it's true, because people need to understand what it is they need to do, why they need to do it, and that's and if you don't communicate that, then people don't have the guidance they need, and guidance is leadership. So yeah, so I mean, the word enough says if you don't communicate enough, then you obviously are not sufficiently leading. I think that the statement is kind of obvious, but what I think is less obvious is that people often aren't aware just how much communication you need to do. So they will, sometimes say, well, I said that, at some point in time. And then I think of the typical marketing story, and the statement is that if you want to get across a certain proposition, you need at least 6 contacts. So you need to tell the story 6 times. I don't know if that's the case always, you need to do that, but it certainly is more than once. So I mean, you should expect
and actually, that number, sorry, I will interrupt you, Roelof, but that number depends now on whom you talk to and who is your audience. Because I've heard some people talking about 13 touches and sometimes even 17. And that kind of goes because people are having information overload, and to get across with your message, you need to stick out enough times to actually get through that old bus. So 17 times, think about that as a leader.
That's a lot. Yeah. So, but you will see the good leaders will repeat their message. They'll keep the message clear. They'll keep it short, and they'll keep it consistent. So they understand how to communicate, and they understand the need to regularly do that, to come up, to turn up, to say things. And this is where you see experience comes in. So experienced leaders know the right level of communication, and that's a lot more than you actually need or you think you need when you start in the leadership position. So that's our take on that one.
Yeah. I had several guests on my podcast talking about that when we discuss leadership and communication. They say, if you think you communicate enough, communicate more. Whatever channel you have, communicate through it, because not every employee is using the same channel that most of the others, and you don't want to miss on those people because they're also crucial. And I gave an example of Cecilia Birgisdottir, one of the guests here from Iceland. She at that moment was working on the digital transformation of Icelandic Post, and they started quite a huge transformation project just before COVID hit. And you imagine one of those events is enough to actually overhaul the whole structure and the whole organization, and they had to two together. And she said, we went out by all channels, including national media, because for us it was important to reach out not only our customers, so Icelanders who would send or receive posts with us, but also our employees. And we went on the national media with that thought in mind. Not every postman, not every person standing in the post office and receiving or sending packages is looking at our internal channels, but they might be reading news. And we wanted to make sure that they get the message clearly and succinctly also. So just be creative and also think about it. Every single channel that you can, use it. But as Roelof said, I think it's super important. Make it clear, concise, short, and consistent, really. And don't get tired of repeating it enough. So, third one, everyone wants to be successful, and it's my job to facilitate that. Everyone wants to be successful, and my job is to facilitate it.
Yeah. So that's your leadership role. Yeah. Really don't think there's anything to say about that. It should be a no-brainer. And although there is, I think what does come into the equation of what successful means, because you want success of the individual to tie in with the success of the team. And that's not always an obvious, simple connect. Those things do not necessarily have to align. So your job as a leader goes further than facilitating. It goes to ensuring that there's alignment of personal success and the team success. And where that disaligns, then you've got a job. You've got to figure out how do you align, how do you align the individual success to the success of the team. So there's a bit more to that than just saying you facilitate the success of an individual.
I love that you bring it up, because it is about understanding, first of all, the motivations of every person. And here I want to bring it up. I could imagine that partly this item comes also from when you sometimes have a seemingly dysfunctional people on your team and you feel like they just want to sabotage everything. I think this could be a good reminder and mantra to say to yourself, this person is here to be successful as well. So A, we might not have a good alignment between the success of the company and the success of this person, or B, even if there is an alignment, we just don't provide the good environment for this person to help us with the success, reaching success. So I think it's very important what you're saying here. It's really about understanding the success definition of each person, the team, the whole organization, and then being the linchpin, being the connector of all those levels, so that we actually have the success on all these levels.
Yeah. So you can actually use this if you have somebody on the team who is dysfunctional, is that you actually have this talk about what constitutes success for you. What do you think you would need to do to be successful? And hopefully you will hear things that may be different to what you were expecting or you didn't know. And then you can also say, well, what do you think needs to be done to make the team successful? And then you try to connect the two. So that's actually a way of talking about dysfunctioning, but not in a negative way, but actually in a positive way. How do we ensure that your success and the team success aligns together? And that's a conversation that's a lot more pleasant than just saying, you're being dysfunctional. You need to improve your act.
Exactly. And sometimes you'll find out that, okay, there is no way of aligning the success of this person, what they want to reach, and the success, how we define it as an organization. And then you need to let go of those people. And the amazing leaders whom I see, they actually help their employees like that to find the next job. They reach out to people in their network, and they're super open about what are the strengths and the goals of that person, so that they find a better environment for them to reach their success as a person.
Exactly. So you're not focused on getting rid of the person. You focus on trying to get that person into a position where they can be more successful. That's a very different way of approaching the issue. Yeah.
So I love that one. So number 4, the importance of building belief. What would you think belief is in this context?
Belief is, I'm taking deeper in your vision of the world. So it's a belief about what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you think it's important. That's how I'm taking the word belief in this sense here. So, I mean, I could also almost use, I think, really the word vision. I'm not clear in this case whether there's any difference. So I don't think this is about belief in the sense of, religious belief. You have to believe. This, I think, is, as I said, means in having a common vision and perhaps a common goal. And yeah, the importance of that is, of course, is that you only become a team when you do have a common belief and a common goal, and you're pulling all to the same reasons, for the same reasons, to the same destination. So that's kind of and that is the role of a leader. A role of a leader is to bring people to this commonality, bring people to inspire them to move in the same direction, to use the same frameworks of understanding, also to build a common culture, which you can use as a platform for doing stuff. That's what the leader's there for. That's what he's there to do. So yes, that's obviously really important. And of course, aligning with point one, they also need to continually communicate about that. That's kind of obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's not easy. Building a belief is also about building change, and that's never simple.
As you said, it ties into what we have already discussed in the communication lesson, and also in the alignment or the success lesson, right? Aligning the success of each person with the success of the company, which always ties into the mission. Hopefully, the success and the mission should be aligned, right? And then it's our as a leader job to align those and to bring everyone towards to keep guiding everyone on the same path, so that we don't have a lot of amazing people running wild, doing their own races, and really wasting the synergy resources that way.
So that's where people also get disenfranchised, is when they no longer connect the success of the company or the team with their own personal success. If they can't do that, then they lose their connection really to the team. So this alignment of success remains important.
Yeah, for sure. Number 5, what gets measured gets repeated. Another simple one, right? Except
people often don't do it. They don't measure. So like I work with a consultancy company, and their interactions with their clients is through meetings. So one of the things that I suggest, as a matter of fact, is why don't we try to put a value on every meeting? What was the impact for the client? Did it have a critical impact or no impact in terms of how to move forward? Did they understand how to move forward, and use that as a metric? And then you start understanding what kind of value are you providing to that client. And of course, if you don't measure that, you just think, okay, we have a meeting, you're not sure. So, and that really applies to everything. If you don't measure it, you don't know it, and you sort of might go around in circles. So if you can measure, it's And I think any important, I mean, if you're in sports, of course, everything gets measured. A lot of things do get measured. So you should always be asking yourself, of course, what metric are we using here to establish our value add, or put a different way, to establish how large our value stream is. So you should be trying to measure your value stream really all the time, if you can.
And I want to give an example of my own KPIs or metrics there that I'm using with my clients. When someone wants to become a client, we usually start with a strategy session or strategy call. And to even book that call, people need to fill out an intake form and answer quite some questions. And quite a lot of them say that just filling or having the time to sit down and answer those questions for themselves is worth the investment of the strategy session. But what I'm using that for, I'm very intentional with what questions went there, because those are the things that will follow up several months down the road whenever I offboard the client, to remind them where they were and how their attitude towards things have changed. And we with my clients work on the leadership, right? It's not so easy to directly measure how that impacted your business, your revenues, your employee engagement and satisfaction levels, and so on and so forth. But when they get reminded of what goals they had, why they had them, for example, or how satisfied they were with different areas of their life, and we look at that several months down the road and ask them, what has changed? This was 7, now it's a 9 out of 10. Why? Have you implemented some actions to make it a 9? Have you changed something in your mindset and your approach to this area of your life to actually feel like actually it's a 9, even though nothing has changed? And we have those discussions, but we also have them not only about the metrics with the numbers, right? We have it with the challenges that they've had and with the goals that they're setting for themselves. And having that conversation, not necessarily about the numbers, but comparing some state some month ago, or as you said in the beginning of the meeting and the end of the meeting, it can be enough to show people what your work with them is doing for them and what kind of value it brings. So it's not always about the measurements as in numbers. It can be some kind of soft things, but the important part, I think, here is to use the words of the clients themselves. I'm opening up their answers when we talk half a year later. I'm opening their answers from the strategy form, intake form, and I say, here you said it this way. How is it now? Or I first ask them the question, let them answer, and then we compare that answer to half-year-old answer and see where the difference has happened.
Yeah, so which is really good what you do. So actually just introducing, because you're right, it's not always just about the measurements themselves, but in your questions, I believe probably what you do is you're actually introducing metrics, which are just ways of looking at stuff. And just being aware that, so I can actually think about it in terms of a metric, in terms of, there's an initial point and there's an end point, and I might be able to differentiate between the two. I mean, that in itself means that you metricized whatever it is you're talking about that. And it's not just a vague blob, on the map. It now gets some kind of, meaning that you can manage and manipulate and improve, really. So again, to improve something, you have to have some concept of metric, that it was bad and it's better, or it's good, it's getting better. So this idea of metric and improvement, they're intimately tied with each other.
And we kind of shifted a bit the conversation because the lesson here sounded like what gets recognized gets repeated, and we started talking about the measures because of the recognition. It's difficult to recognize something if you don't know what you're actually aiming for, right? And what you're trying to achieve and how you can measure that. But here, I think it's also about the culture thing. If you only talk on the meetings what went wrong, even with the best intention to learn from those lessons, fail fast, but actually learn fast, as we discussed some weeks ago. But you also need to recognize people when they make progress, when something goes well, and so on, because you want to focus on both sides of the equation, not only on the things that we still need to improve, but also what is already improving and what already works well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's how can you make your strong points even stronger and recognize that? Yeah, that's certainly the case.
I see a comment again from Daniel here. Let's read it. Progression can be slow and therefore go unnoticed without points of reflection and measurement in the process. Yeah, exactly. And that's just as I said with the leadership and personal development that I work with. It's not like one session, they flip everything and it's like, voila, yeah, that was because of the conversation with Anna that I'm thinking that way, acting that way, and so on. But when we start connecting those dots in the reflection conversations, they start making those connections, and it's important to do it in the team as well.
Yeah, now this is a good point, because you sometimes don't realize that you're making progress, and that's just like it's like also when on the bad side, when you're putting on weight, you don't notice it from one day to another until after about 2 weeks, and you suddenly do notice it. So all that time, something's been going on.
Yeah, it's important to have those micro points of reflection and measurement so that you can actually notice those things in advance on time. All right. Lesson 7, influence is more important than power. I think we've discussed it a couple of times already on this show.
Yeah. So this is a nice one, and there's a nice story when you do sales. One of the things that in sales theory is to look for the fox. And I don't know if you're familiar with that analogy, the fox. So there are two ways of you have authority. There's two ways of having power. One is through authority. You're the manager, you're the boss, and the other one is through influence. And you can draw an axis with authority and influence. And the people, there are four categories. There are people who have authority. There's a CEO, and he's very charismatic, so he also has influence. So he's highly effective. Then you have people who have authority but no influence. These are the sort of, kind of washed up types who might still have a corner office, but nobody really, everybody pretty much ignores them. And they're there and they're sitting out their time. Then you have people who have no authority and no influence. Okay, so at least that's consistent. So nothing's going to ever happen there. And you have this very interesting thing, which is people who have no authority, but they have incredible influence. And they're called foxes. So when you're in a sales process, your job is to go and find the fox, because the fox is the one, and you can recognize them in a meeting, because they generally will be saying nothing. And then after about, two-thirds down the meeting, the chairman or the boss will suddenly say to Mary or George, so Mary, what do you think about that? And you'll see that the room will be completely silent. Nothing will be said. And Mary is generally very cautious what they say. So their language is often very cautious, but everybody is hanging on every single word, and everything will fail, so they will say, I think we're probably going to have to look at this a little bit more. Well, now you're gone. Or they say, this sounds, this makes sense to me. I think, this probably has a chance of succeeding, and then you're in, because then you've found the fox and you've got the fox on your side. So influence is really, really important. And I think it's also a good point for people to realize that authority can often follow influence. So if you're able to build up influence, generally speaking, a leadership team, management team can recognize that and see that, this is someone who has influence, and then they will give the authority to match. So if you're really interested in building a career, now you probably are quite right that you can't determine when you're going to get promoted, but you are in control of your own influence, of building influence. So if you build influence, you have a much quicker chance, better chance of getting promoted to the authority level that is in line with your influence.
Here, actually, I love the theory, and thanks for sharing that, or the matrix. It actually makes so much sense, and I directly have names and faces in my head about each quadrant from my previous corporate experience. But I actually want to give a caution here to you leaders tuning in. Whenever you identify those foxes within your organization, make sure you know what their definition of success is. They might not want any official authority whatsoever. There are people who naturally create a lot of influence and can have a lot of influence in their environment, but they don't want to be in official spotlight.
No, right. So 100%. The fox, I should have said that, and I'm glad you said that. That's exactly the characteristic of fox. They want to be like the fox, in the background, come up at the right times, and they do not want the authority. So yes, you're quite right. The fox is someone who has the influence and has a tremendous amount of influence, but is not interested in tying that with authority. So yeah.
So yeah, it just again shows how intertwined these lessons are, right? We discussed the authority right now, and again, it ties into the definition of success of every person, and we have discussed those like interconnections before as well. Let's quickly take the last one that we already discussed as well. Being vulnerable builds trust. Do we even need to say anything here?
Yeah, do you even need to say that? Because it's well, let's take it a little bit to things we've discussed it many times, but being vulnerable builds or creates a safe environment, and in a safe environment, you could build trust. I don't think being vulnerable builds trust directly, but it's the being vulnerable creates a safe environment where you point out your mistakes, and you can laugh at them, or you show that making mistakes. Not too many mistakes, of course, but making mistakes is part of, is how you learn. And if you, as a leader, do that, then you obviously don't find it a problem that your people you lead also makes mistakes. And then they're willing to be open and transparent if you're open and transparent. And openness and transparency, of course, are the basis of trust. In fact, that might even be the definition of trust, to be honest. I haven't really thought about it. So, yes.
It's important. I heard there are so many variations of this saying that showing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. And I liked how in one of the courses I've done for my own development recently, there was a phrase that only strong people can cry, and that was in the context of crying authentically and crying in public. Yeah. So think about that. Other people see you as the strong if you dare to do that. I think that was a very powerful statement. Only strong people can cry.
That's a good point. And actually, I mean, the painful bit is that weak people can't. It's because then it is seen. So that's actually very interesting. You see exactly the same phenomenon, crying. If a strong person cries, that is seen as a sign of strength. But if a weak person cries, that just confirms a sign of weakness. So you see, this is a very tricky one, this one. It's exactly the same phenomenon, but it's who does it, who's doing the crying. Yeah.
Who's doing the crying?
Yeah, who's doing the crying, exactly.
All right. There was, I think, a very powerful discussion. Please, viewers, let us know what you think, but I took a lot of points for myself here, and I'm really grateful to Gordon for this post. It summarizes a lot of lessons, really, and opens up for a lot of beautiful conversations. And thank you, Roelof, as always, for sharing your thoughts and insights and experience. They are super valuable.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for your great questions. Always the great questions are always the basis for having a sensible answer.
Always takes two to tango, right? And to all of you, let's remind Roelof that we have the group Helix of Success on LinkedIn. The link to that is in the description to this video. So please follow, or not follow, but join, and let's continue the conversations there. We want to have that as the platform for you to unite with other people who want to find their definition of success and who want to reach that success in a sustainable way, both for personally and professionally and as a leader of an organization. So join. Let's see each other there.